Welcome back to the Crypto channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now it is happening. Bitcoin is officially starting to confirm a rejection from this strong area of resistance, which is also following the US stock market playing out a major rejection, at least in the short term, from this significant area of resistance around the highs, while Ethereum is also playing out a rejection from strong resistance, while Bitcoin is coming down to sweep liquidity at the lows, and XRP is now testing and possibly about to break below a very important area of support that we need to pay attention to. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, we need to take a quick look at the US stock market today. This is the S&P 500 index on the 1 hour time frame, and the US stock market, the S&P 500 index, actually opened close to all-time highs, slightly above the previous high, as we could see here at the beginning of the trading day. But then, of course, we were running into this same massive area of resistance for the US stock market here, and then saw another major rejection. At least in the short term, we saw pretty much a straight line move down from the open of more than 1% in basically a 1 hour candle, which is actually quite a large move for a massive index like the S&P 500 index. And now, obviously, as you can see right here at the time of recording this video, after we saw that strong rejection, we're now playing out a little bit of a bounce again. Potentially soon could see another retest of this resistance, potentially as a likely scenario. But just keep in mind, we're still finding strong resistance around the highs for the stock market, which will likely continue to cause a lot of struggle in the short term for Bitcoin and crypto. In other words, don't necessarily expect a lot of strength or a lot of bullish momentum right now for the crypto market, especially while the stock market is continuing to struggle around this resistance. And so with that being said, of course, keep that in mind throughout the video. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today, here on the weekly time frame, nothing's really changed at all over the last few days. In fact, for multiple months, this super trend indicator is still sitting in the red, indicating a larger bearish market or a larger correction in the price of Bitcoin. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin price chart, obviously we still have a massive bearish divergence, which is still active. We've not yet confirmed any invalidation signal to invalidate this larger bearish divergence. So ultimately, once again, this is still causing a lot of weakness and obviously bearish price action on the much larger time frames. Remember, this is not a short-term signal telling us to expect a crash within a matter of hours or days, but this is a multi-month bearish move that's still currently playing out on the much larger time frames. And of course, it is also worth pointing out that we are in oversold in the weekly Bitcoin RSI. But as I've explained recently here on the channel, of course, an oversold signal is not necessarily a bottom signal. The last time we saw an oversold signal in the weekly Bitcoin RSI was around the middle of 2022. And yes, we did see a bit of a relief after that signal confirmed over the next few weeks or so. But remember, that was not necessarily the end of the bear market. That was not an actual bottom. It was a local low in the price that held as the low for just some time, for a few weeks. But ultimately, later on, we did go lower. And so once again, the larger trends that we're in, still not looking good, still not in the clear yet. But if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, obviously we have been finding a lot of support at this local low at around 60,000. And I would also expect a lot of support in between 53,000 to 56,000 if the price actually gets back to those levels. And as for resistance, we're now perfectly rejecting from this exact level of resistance here at around 72,000, which is the low end of this area of resistance, really sitting in between around 72,000 to 76,000. And so obviously, as we could see over the last half a week or so, the moment the price bounced up towards pretty much exactly 72,000, that's exactly where we started to find resistance at, which is to be expected. Obviously, this was previously a significant level of resistance on the price chart, and also previous support close to this low right here around April 2025. But also keep in mind that the price is potentially still trying to play out this oversold signal on the 3-day Bitcoin RSI. And keep in mind, at the time of recording this video, we're actually just potentially starting to enter into oversold again, because we've barely seen a reset. We only saw that one decent bounce, but obviously we haven't really seen much more bullish or even sideways price action since then, because obviously we're now playing out a slight little rejection. And so obviously we haven't really had enough time to actually reset the RSI out of oversold, which tells us potentially we could still be in for a sideways consolidation, bouncing around between this this support and this resistance. So yes, even though in the immediate short term, we're currently playing out a rejection from this resistance, we could still be about to just bounce around relatively sideways in the coming days or possibly weeks between this support and this resistance. Remember, choppy sideways price action is made up of both bullish price action and bearish price action, but still just kind of bouncing around somewhat sideways between support and resistance is still actually quite a likely scenario. And like I said earlier in the video, in many videos recently here on the channel, I'd not necessarily expect a lot of bullish price action, especially if the stock market continues to struggle around this resistance. Once again, that means expect a lot of struggle in the short term for Bitcoin and crypto. And if we're taking a look at the shorter term here on the Bitcoin price chart on the 2-hour time frame, obviously the price is continuing the rejection now from this level of resistance, which specifically is sitting at around 71.6 to 71.7k. So basically just under that $72,000 level, really close to 72,000. We obviously have a lot of resistance around there on the price chart. And as of recording this video on the 2-hour Bitcoin RSI, we're getting close to oversold. We're not there just yet, which means we do technically have a little more room towards the downside in the shorter term before we start hitting oversold in the short term. But remember, an oversold signal is a signal telling us that we're kind of going too far to the downside too quickly, and we do need a little bit of time just in the shorter term to reset and basically set that RSI back towards more neutral levels, which can technically give us more room towards the downside later on. And potentially another reason as to why we're obviously playing out this slight little pullback, on top of the fact that we're simply rejecting from resistance that we've all been looking at over the last few days, and on top of the fact that, of course, the US stock market struggling a lot in the short term, which is not good news for Bitcoin and crypto. On top of those reasons, another reason as to why we're potentially seeing this slight little pullback is due to the fact that we're simply sweeping some liquidity that was sitting below the price of Bitcoin here, which I talked about in my last video. I pointed out that we do have liquidity at give or take 67,000. We also had a small amount here at just above 66,000. So right now we're basically just wiping out that shorter term liquidity that only just recently started building below the price. But it is worth pointing out that, of course, here on the weekly time frame, looking at the last 1 week worth of price action in the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we still actually have a major level of liquidity building at give or take 72.4k. So keep that in mind. That's still a level to watch out for on the price chart, but also keep in mind all of the other factors that are also influencing the price. Remember, it's not just one chart or one signal that influences the price. It's all of these things combined have a influence on the price of Bitcoin. And so considering the fact that, of course, the US stock market, which is a big influence for Bitcoin, is struggling a lot in the short term, and considering we're only just beginning a bit of a rejection here from this strong resistance at close to 72,000, it's likely that at least over the next 1 or 2 days, we'll struggle a little bit here in the short term, not necessarily crash below these lows. I still think, based on all of this information and this oversold signal playing out, that this will continue to be at least a local low for the coming days or possibly weeks, which means the price remaining above 60,000, at least just in the short term. Once again, this is not the bottom. I'm not saying the price cannot ever go lower than that point. I'm just saying at least in the next few days or possibly weeks, will likely remain above give or take 60,000 and potentially just remain in this range in between around 60,000 and 72,000, bouncing from support and rejecting from resistance. But remember, understand the difference between the different time frames. That's the shorter term situation, kind of like what we saw just here on the price chart during basically end of November, entering into December, and pretty much all of December 2025 is basically the price action that I kind of expect for Bitcoin right now in the shorter term, potentially over the next couple of weeks. But remember, that can occur during the much larger multi-month bearish trend, which is technically still the case if we're zooming out to the weekly time frame. And so overall, those are my expectations and predictions and the key levels and signals to watch out for in the short term for the price of Bitcoin. And obviously, if you want to trade any of these moves in Bitcoin or any crypto, you need to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And if you use the first link below this video in the description and in the pinned comment, the first link below this video will take you to this page right here over on the BTNX crypto exchange, which by the way is a no KYC exchange and is an exchange that I personally use myself. And just by simply making taking into account using that first link below the video to Bitfinex, once again, it'll take you to this page right here where there's an exclusive prize pool of up to 50,000 USDT simply just by trading crypto using that first link below the video to Bitfinex. So obviously, if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out and take advantage of this. Once again, first link below the video. And remember, Bitfinex is also a no KYC exchange. But if you want another option out there, another exchange that I personally use myself, which is also a no KYC exchange, then in that situation, check out the second link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, because the second link below the video will take you to this page right here over on the 2bit crypto exchange. And they just recently partnered with La Liga. So to celebrate this partnership, there's an 800,000 USD prize pool here just by simply trading crypto using that second link below the video to 2bit. You can take advantage of major prizes here just by trading crypto. So once again, if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out and take advantage of this. Once again, second link below the video. And remember, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the daily time frame, and right now, obviously, the Bitcoin dominance for the most part is still just basically bouncing around sideways on the price chart, playing out short-term bullish moves, short-term bearish moves, but still kind of just chopping around in a bit of a sideways price range. And so obviously, this is still telling us that a lot of the major altcoins out there on average will likely continue performing very similar to whatever Bitcoin is doing. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day time frame, we can see that obviously right now the price of ETH is also playing out a bit of a rejection from resistance, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But while we're here on the 3-day time frame, it is worth pointing out that the 3-day Ethereum RSI is already getting close to once again entering into oversold territories, because obviously we barely saw a reset only over the last few days, over the last half a week. Yes, we saw a decent little short-term bounce in just the short term, obviously, but we didn't really see any sustained relief, kind of like what we saw during December. And so December obviously is the perfect example of a decent relief, resetting the RSI from close to oversold back towards neutral levels in the middle of the RSI, which then gave us much more room towards the downside to play out this next massive bearish move until, of course, we hit oversold again, which is yet another signal just in the short term to tell us that we're likely going to have a bit of a break, a bit of a relief from all of the bearish price action just to reset the RSI. But remember, this is not necessarily a bottom signal. We can have a slight little relief and then ultimately continue the larger bearish trend later on. But just keep that in mind. Obviously, we've not really seen much of a relief over the last few days, only a slight little relief, which means we don't really have a significant amount of room towards the downside now in the RSI, because we're obviously still sitting very close to oversold territories on the 3-day time frame. But if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, it is quite clear that here in the short term, in the immediate short term, we're seeing obviously a strong rejection from pretty much this exact level of resistance that I've been warning about since before we perfectly rejected from this level, sitting at around 2150. So 2150 still acting as a key level of resistance, really sitting in between around 2150 to 2250 as a strong area of resistance based on a previous strong Fibonacci area of support, now acting as new resistance. And obviously, while the price of ETH is playing out a rejection from this exact level of resistance here, we're potentially now on our way towards retesting this crucial Fibonacci level of support, sitting at around 1,800, 1.8K as a key level of support to pay attention to for the price of ETH, which once again is looking likely that we could soon retest this level. And obviously, it is crucial for the price of ETH to hold above 1.8K, because let's just say if we confirm a daily candle close below 1.8K, and especially if we fail to get back above that level, in that situation, we could potentially see a move all the way down towards around 1.5K to 1.6K as the next significant area of support to watch out for. But remember, considering that we're still very close to oversold on the 3-day time frame, and we're now, as of recording this video, actually entering back into oversold on the daily Ethereum RSI, considering those reasons in the short term, it's likely that we could soon, not necessarily right this immediate moment, but within the next day or so, we could soon see another slight little bounce, potentially continuing to hold above that 1.8K level. But remember, that's just talking about the very short-term moves here. When we're overall looking at the larger trend we're in, it's still very much clear that we're in a longer-term bearish trend. So keep that in mind. Yes, we could see short-term reliefs and little breaks and bounces and things like that in the short term along the way towards the downside, but that does not necessarily change the fact that we're still clearly within a much larger bearish trend. So keep that in mind. And if we're taking a look at the price of XRP on the weekly time frame. It's a somewhat similar situation for XRP. Yes, we could see little short-term bounces and reliefs, but overall, the bigger picture still not looking good, as I've been warning about basically every day since the highs back at the end of July, early August, when the price was well above $3. I've been warning about this massive multi-month collapse in the price since all the way back up there when pretty much no one believed me, but obviously all of my videos are still public back then, warning about all of this still to come. But right now, the price of XRP is testing a crucial Fibonacci area of support, sitting in between around $1.30 to $1.40. And previously, just over the last few days, this has been acting as a bit of short-term support. But if the price of XRP actually confirms a break below $1.30, especially if we see, let's just say, a weekly candle close, but even a few daily candle closes below $1.30, and especially if we fail to get back above that level, in that situation, we'd likely see a continued dump towards this next level of support, sitting at around $1.13, give or take. And below $1.13, the next target would be sitting in between 90 cents to $1. And if we actually start seeing a strong confirmed break below around $1.30, that would potentially be a bit of a trading opportunity to have a new shorts position to trade towards these next price targets towards the downside. As always, not financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just letting you know some insight on what I'm potentially looking at doing myself with my own money. As always, not financial advice, but that's a possible trading opportunity here if it first confirms. I want to make that clear. We've not yet confirmed a break below $1.30, but that could potentially be another short position opportunity to short another little move towards the downside if that support breaks. But for now, we're possibly still playing out this oversold signal in the 3-day XRP RSI. Obviously, this is the first time we hit oversold just a few days ago since around July 2024. And obviously, the last time this signal confirmed in the 3-day XRP RSI, we did see a decent relief over the next few days and even over the next 1 to 2 weeks. So keep that in mind. We've barely seen much of a relief. Yes, we saw a decent bounce basically the day after we saw that crash, but overall, once again, it is still quite likely that in the next few days, or possibly within the next 1 or 2 weeks max, really, we could still play out a bit more of a relief, which means either choppy sideways price action or just a slight bullish relief. But I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that this is the bottom. I'm not saying expect a massive bullish trend reversal, just a slight little break in the short term from all of the bearish price action, maybe choppy sideways price action, which can contain short-term bearish moves and short-term bullish moves, but ultimately having a slight little break during the longer-term bearish trend is still my expectation in the coming days or possibly weeks. But remember, if we're talking about a period of months, we're still not in the clear yet if we're talking about the larger trend. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana really quick here on the 3-day time frame, obviously right now the price of Solana, like I talked about in my last video, is now retesting this important area of support. Obviously, my last video, I said, get ready, potentially very soon, we're about to retest this area, and that is now happening as of recording this video, sitting in between $75 to $80. And previously, we found a lot of support in this area in between $75 to $80. But if the price actually breaks below $75 with confirmation in that situation, easily we could see a move towards the local low here, sitting at around $68, give or take. But honestly, if that fails to hold, we're looking at much lower price targets. So basically, we need to hold above this $75 to $80 area as support, which we're testing right now in order to avoid potentially much more bearish price action. But remember, it's also worth pointing out that we're still in oversold here in the 3-day Solana RSI for the first time in actually a very long time. We got close to oversold here around March 2025, and what came next after that signal was just a slight little relief, which in this case actually lasted for over a week, for almost 2 weeks. Remember, each one of these candles is 3 days, whereas this time around, obviously, we only saw that one bounce just over a period of a couple of days, and not really a relief that lasted for a week or two. So keep in mind, obviously, we're still in oversold, which means we are technically still due to see a bit more of a relief, which doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of bullish price action. It can just be some choppy sideways price action, bouncing around sideways, playing out bullish and bearish price action, potentially still holding these lows as support. But remember, if we're looking at the bigger picture, the longer term trends that we're in, despite seeing the occasional little relief here and there, yes, we're still within a larger bearish trend. We've not yet confirmed any reversal out of that larger bearish trend. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink, it's basically the same story for Chainlink as well. Here on the 3-day time frame, we're still clearly within a longer term multi-month bearish trend, but the short-term situation is that we're still now entering into oversold on the 3-day Chainlink RSI, and we're also now retesting this important area of support here, sitting in between roughly $8 to $8.50, potentially around $7.90 as the low end of this support based on these candle closes. And remember, really just pay attention to what Bitcoin is doing to figure out what is likely going to happen for a lot of these altcoins, which means if Bitcoin continues to struggle a little bit more in the short term in the coming hours or maybe the next 1 or 2 days, but then let's just say in a couple of days from now it starts having a slight little bounce again to play out a bit of a sideways price range, in that situation, expect something similar to that for a lot of these altcoins. It's a very likely scenario. Once again, based on the RSI, still very close to oversold and now entering back into oversold on the 3-day Chainlink price chart. We are still technically due to see a little bit more of a relief, maybe some choppy sideways price action within the next few days or so. But remember, if we see that, do not be fooled by short-term reliefs. We're still clearly within a larger bearish trend. And if we actually break below around $7.90, $8 in that situation, if we see confirmation, and especially if we fail to get back above that level, we are looking at potentially the $5 area, around $5 to $5.50 as the next massive area of support towards the downside if we first confirm a break below around $7.90 to $8, which is also a possible trading opportunity. Not financial advice, but just pointing out something on the price chart. And once again, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out those links below this video to those exchanges if you want to take advantage of extra bonuses only available using those links to certain exchanges. And of course, if you want to actually know how you can trade these moves, no matter what direction the price is going, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions. And the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.